So let's talk about some other ways to reduce moral hazard in insurance contracts. So, in addition to copays and coinsurance, many contracts also have what's called a deductible. Now, a deductible is a fixed amount of money, say $1,000 a year, and you pay for that you pay for that deductible out of pocket, and then your insurance kicks in. So, right, the first, right, so if you have full insurance and a deductible, you pay for the first $1,000 of your medical care in a year, and then after that, your insurance company pays for the rest, right? And so this is right. So this can be paired with copay or coinsurance, right? This is separate from copay or coinsurance, right? Copay says every time you go to the doctor, you pay $100, for instance, and then the insurance company pays for rest. For the rest, coinsurance says let's pay for a certain percentage of the treatment, and then you pay for the rest. A deductible says your first $1,000 of medical care, no matter how it's consumed, whether you go to the doctor a lot or whether you have one giant hospital bill, you pay that out of pocket, right? You pay that yourself. After that, the insurance contract kicks in. So you're effectively uninsured for your first $1,000 of medical expenses, and then the contract kicks in. So this can be paired with copayments and coinsurance, and I'll walk you through how it can be paired with coinsurance, right? So let's say that we have this is a hypothetical contract, and you have the deductible of omega. So deductible is omega, and we have 33% coinsurance, for expenses between omega and psi, where psi is some catastrophic coverage, right? So if you get, for instance, shot in the face and you need facial reconstruction surgery, right, that's going to put you over psi. Psi might be $100,000 or something, right? So the idea behind this contract is up until omega, you pay you pay everything, right? For your first $1,000 of expenses, for your first omega dollars of expenses, you pay exactly that comes out of your money. You pay that in full. From omega to psi, you pay 33% of your medical bills, and beyond psi, everything's taken care of. So what does this look like on a graph, right? Well, it looks like this, right? So let's go here, right? And we have so we have omega, and then we have psi, and then so your first omega dollars, right? You're going to have a slope of 1, so m equals slope, right? And x-axis here is dollars net, dollars of net healthcare expenses, right? So this is how much you and the insurance company together are paying. And then the x-axis is dollars of out of pocket expenses. right? So this is the y-axis is how much you're actually paying, and the x-axis is how much your total medical bills are, right? So from 0 to omega, you're effectively uninsured. You pay full price, right? Then from omega to psi, you pay 33% of the price, right? So it's going to be, right? So here we have a slope of 33 cents, right? Where you pay 33 cents per dollar. And then once you go past psi, right? Once you face a terrible accident and you need complete coverage, that's a bad line. You no longer pay anything beyond that, right? So this is m equals 0. So these types of insurance contracts exist in the real world, right? Where you have a deductible and you pay full price until you meet that deductible. And then there's sort of an intermediate zone where you've met your deductible, so you're partially insured but not fully insured. You have coinsurance, but in the case where something really terrible happens to you, right, and you need intense medical experience, right, you suffer like a chemical burn or you get shot or something like that, then healthcare is free at that point, right? Each additional dollar of healthcare is free. So this is an example of a deductible plus coinsurance contract, right? And so then you might ask, well, how does deductible interact with copays? And basically, it's a little boring. Well, I guess it's not that boring. So let's go over deductibles with copays. So let's go high deductible. Deductible, and we have dollar. Dollars here and quantity here, and we have our demand curve, right? And so this is price uninsured, right? We have our very high deductible, and we have our price copay, right? So let's go ahead and draw all the lines, do all the things. Right, so we have price copay, and actually I don't want to draw that line yet, because as a reminder, the copay price only kicks in past omega, right? So that's not quite on point, right? So this is we'll go omega A for this is the first deductible we're looking at. This is a high deductible, right? So right, so the if the person, right, so in this case, right, the amount of healthcare the person demands is going to be here at point U, right? This is you're effectively uninsured, right? You have a copayment, it kicks in eventually, but it only kicks in if your medical expenses exceed your deductible. So at this point, the copayment is essentially irrelevant, and because it's smaller than the deductible, right? So it gets eaten by the deductible, right? Where sure, right, you're on the hook for the first $100 of every doctor's visit, but this guy is never visiting the doctor enough for that to be relevant. He's just paying out of pocket for the doctor's visit each time, right? If he visited the doctor 300 times in a year, he'd meet his deductible, and then from then on, he'd pay $100 per doctor's visit. But he's only visiting the doctor once a year, and he's paying full price. So this guy is effectively uninsured, right? So he goes to point U, and there's no social loss, right? Now let's consider what happens if I lower the deductible. So this is a low deductible plan, right? And that should be an I, right? So on a low deductible plan, price on the y-axis, quantity on the x-axis, right? We pretend this is the same demand curve as before, right? We still have point U, which is what you get if you're uninsured or if you have a very high deductible, right? So we have PU and quantity if you're uninsured or if you have the high deductible, and then we still have your copay. Right, so this is the copay price. Right, and now let's say my deductible is here. Right, so let's say my deductible is lower. So let's say my deductible is like here, right? Omega B. Right, so my deductible's here now. So let's do a dashed line. Right, so omega B, and we'll do a dotted line. Now we'll do a dashed line just to be consistent, right? So this is my new deductible, right? So I'm responsible for all healthcare expenses up until that point. Well, how much am I going to consume is the question, right? And I'm going to consume this much, right? Because this is the price I'm going to consume this much, right? This is the price I face at, like, this is a point where price equals quantity, right? So I'm going to consume this much medical care, right? And then how much am I paying for it? Well, I'm paying full price up to here. So effectively, sorry, I should draw this dashed line further, right? I'm going to pay the uninsured price up until the deductible, at which point I suddenly pay, so red is price I actually pay. I pay at each Q. Right, so the red lines I just drew are the price I actually pay at each quantity. So, then, right, so let me just go ahead and do dashed here. Right, okay. So, right, so the red lines are the price I'm actually paying for each quantity, right? There we go. Okay, right. So the red lines are the solid red lines are the price I'm actually paying at each quantity, right? So we see where so you'll notice that the black and the red intersect actually at 2 points here. And in this case, I'm going to choose the lower point. If you in practice, if you come across a problem like this, you'll need to see. You'll have two candidates for potential quantities, right? You'll have quantity U, and then this quantity, which we'll just call quantity B. Right? We'll call this point B, right? And in practice, you just need to see which is going to generate more surplus for the consumer. In this case, it's going to be, right? So there's going to be negative consumer surplus here, right? So hold on. So negative consumer surplus here. And there's going to be positive consumer surplus here. And I didn't draw this great, but this is, so let's see. Green equals positive. Positive consumer surplus. Blue equals negative consumer surplus. Right? And in this case, the green triangle is greater than the blue triangle, right? So the blue area is less than the green area. Here, Right. So in this case, you get more positive consumer surplus than negative consumer surplus. I probably could have drawn the graph a little better. Could have moved omega b over a bit, but just pretend that this is obvious from the picture here. And so you're going to go to point B, right? The consumer loses this much from overpaying for that medical care, but gains this much for underpaying for that medical care, relative to how much they're willing to pay, which is again given by the demand curve. They're going to go to point B, right? What does the social loss look like? Well, the social loss is, and we'll do social loss in orange here since I already used red, or maybe a slightly different color red. Now we have social loss is just here. Right, so social loss is in this sort of trapezoid, right? Which is smaller than it was when before the deductible, right? So there's no social loss if your deductible is high enough because you're effectively uninsured. But if you have a low deductible, there is still some social loss. But again, without the deductible at all, it would have been, and you can't see that. Without the deductible at all, the social loss would have been this whole triangle, right? So without any deductible, the social loss would have been that whole triangle. The deductible cuts off a piece. The deductible cuts off the amount of consumer surplus the person is losing from the transaction and makes it so the social loss is just this trapezoid here. So deductibles can be paired with both coinsurance and copayments to reduce social loss. Now, the last way of reducing moral hazard we've already talked about is monitoring and gatekeeping, right? So monitoring, right, that's what Geico does to me, right? They monitor my my driving, right? In health insurance, right, this can be right? This could be maybe they make you go in for regular checkups, right? They ask you about your exercise patterns, right? Differently than monitoring, right? You may notice actually, and this is something, so my first job, we got $200 a year for doing like dumb workout challenges. And I was confused. I was like, free money, why are we getting $200 a year for like walking or not drinking alcohol for a month, right? Why are we, or getting a checkup, right? Why are we getting paid money for this? And the reason is health insurance, and today, like I get calls every so often, like, hello, this is Blue Cross Blue Shield. Would you like to talk to your personal health coach? And the answer is always, no, I don't want to talk to my personal health coach. Shut up. It's a machine. I'm allowed to yell at the machine. And the reason why health insurance companies offer these fitness plans and, incentives to get checkups, things like that, is because they are trying to make people healthier, right? So it's, you can mitigate moral hazard by trying, right? The risky thing to do is not work out, right? When you don't work out, that increases the odds of a heart attack, for instance. And so your insurance company might incentivize you to work out, right? And so just because of behavioral economics, right, you can give people small incentives that have big effects, right? So if you give someone $100 to improve their workout routine, a lot of people will do that. And that might actually, as the insurance company, that might save you more than $100 on the other end. So that's another way to reduce moral hazard, is to offer incentives for good behavior and encourage people for healthy behaviors. You can also gatekeep people, right? So this is very common in countries where they have nationalized healthcare, where there are some treatments that the country just decides are cost inefficient and they just won't offer, right? So if your knee, to a certain extent, right, if your knee is hurt but not that badly hurt, we're not going to allow you we're not going to let you get the expensive knee treatment, right? And it may be, right, this is easier to do, by the way, if the doctor works for the government, right? If the doctor works for the government and the government is the insurance company, you have much better incentives. Where in the US, right, the doctor doesn't work for the insurance company And so the doctor has an incentive to lie to the insurance company to get more money. In the UK, the doctor works for the government, and so the doctor has an incentive to save the government money. And so that helps with gatekeeping, which you right, when your insurance company says, right, I remember I got my insurance company tried to gatekeep me earlier this year. We switched from CVS prescription insurance to MedImpact prescription insurance. And MedImpact tried to kick me off my prescription. They were like, this migraine medication costs, which you guys have heard way too much about already, costs $1,400 a month. Prove to us you need it, right? Go to your doctor. We're going to make the doctor do a bunch of paperwork to show that the patient needs this and there isn't a cheaper alternative. And the idea behind that is that, the doctor might want the more... It's annoying for the doctor to have to go through this. And if the patient really doesn't need the medication, the doctor will just say, okay, let's switch to the generic form of the drug that already exists, or a cheaper drug that will achieve basically the same result. Now, in my case, MedImpact didn't get what they want. I stayed on the expensive medication, and my doctor was willing to jump through all the hoops MedImpact made my doctor go through, and me go through, right? They imposed a cost on both of us to stay on the medication, just to basically show I really needed the medication, right? So... that's another, like when insurance companies make it really hard for you to get insurance, they're trying to address the moral hazard problem, right? When your insurance company tries to not pay you for something, right, they're effectively saying, prove to us you really needed this, right? And so this kind of behavior, which is super frustrating to be on the other side of, is rational from the insurance company's perspective, right? Why does everybody hate insurance companies? Health insurance companies in particular? It's because they're trying to limit ex post moral hazard, and they do that by trying, right? We think of it as, they're trying not to pay. From the insurance company's perspective, we're trying to get these people to show us they really needed these treatments. And now, in practice, those two things look like the same. So, all that is to say, next time you're thinking of going out and murdering a healthcare CEO in cold blood, consider whether they were just doing things that they were just, their business practices were just doing what was necessary to reduce ex post moral hazard.